He never thought he would become a detective in his own family. But when he started noticing his wife's strange spending habits and couldn't find an explanation, he decided to start investigating. And what he discovered made him shudder. The story in my dear wife's hilarious adventures comes from the fact that I get a text message one evening. I have a pretty good amount of money withdrawn from the card this very wife has been using. She's out again tonight with this friend of hers, Anya, who I can't get over. As it turns out later, this friend has a lot to do with it. And what does that have to do with anything? I'll tell you now. There's a digression for just a minute. In my story, it is important for you to know where the wife wanders and why I did not particularly mind about those withdrawn money. Explanation. My wife, Victoria, was from a small town. As they say, I drove her from her village to the big city. And in my big city, as it turned out, her friend, Anya, who was my wife's, well, kind of, countrywoman, also started living there. They are the same age. They are both 25 years old. By the way, I am 35. In general, I could not tolerate this Anya at all. My gut felt that she was something wrong. From the outside, everything seems to be fine. Somewhere working friendly. And the word ass, like at the table, does not say, but still there is something wrong with her. I think it's easy to expect something bad from her. Once expressed his opinion about Anya, his wife. The case ended with insults and a quarrel. Well, then the last straw in our triangle was the fact that he and my wife once came to our house while not sober. And I'm not going to put up with it all, said this Anna, and actually sent her out of the house to hell. After which my wife had one of the very rare and serious quarrels. They say, you do not respect, dear to me, but so on. Anyway, I'll rewind all this nonsense for you. In short, my wife and I agreed so that both wolves, satiated, and sheep can sort of communicate. They will meet anywhere. But just so I don't see it, or better yet, don't know it. Back in the evening, when I get a text message from the bank. After that, in about 5 hours, my wife comes after me, where they say she was at the club and had some kind of event. Then again in about 2 weeks, and then another. And every other time, a considerable amount of cash was withdrawn. I asked why it was so expensive, and I was like, we pay for each other in turns. Okay, but why so expensive? And most importantly, that for me, it could end up even more expensive. I soon found out for myself. Anyway, one day I had to be at a meeting. All that day it rained. Well, at one point I looked down at my pants, and there's mud and water. When you get out of the car, the muddy sill leaves no chance for the pants. Well, when you go out 20 times a day, the pants are just doomed. Anyway, I go home to change clothes. I go in. No wife in sight. I look at my shoes. I think they are at home. Then I hear the shower running in the bathroom. I quickly change clothes. I look, and on the table at her open laptop. There's also a social network open on it. Well, I certainly looked, read the correspondence, and the conversation is with this Anya, a friend, Vicky. And besides all sorts of stuff, I read about some Albertic. He works as a host, or maybe a DJ, in short, from among the workers of the club. I read the correspondence and understand from their conversation that it is Anya with Albertic. And like even more than once, but the main thing is not even that. They are sort of joking, and my wife answers this Anya, that if she ate something so bad, I will not say the name, a substance, Albertic's dignity may seem, excuse me, bigger. I hear my wife coming out into the hallway. I automatically moved away from the laptop quickly, but then suddenly I think, am I a guest here? Or does it not concern me? Called her here, and I say, what kind of talk is that? Here's what you think is normal, or what? I'm listening. We talked to her. Unlike a lot of similar stories and accounts, of course no one confessed anything to me. So what? Said Anya about the peculiarities of the body in her comrade. Said the word laughed. So what? But I had enough of this bit of information, and to finally understand everything about this Anechka to the end, and most importantly, to finally stop trusting my wife. And what is actually to do, although about the treason of the wife is not a word here, but something I do not like her jokes with her girlfriend, especially on two such topics. It's my day off in a day. I asked my wife, well, they say, you meet with your favorite Anechka. No, and we did not immediately say no, and it was not in the plans. And so often we cross paths with her. It's time we got to know the world. Such a sudden change of rhetoric in their relationship. Just after I read my correspondence. Anyway, it's suspicious. Anyway, I go to my friend's house to discuss the whole thing and figure out if it's time to investigate something, or if I've just got my eye blurry and am making up things here that aren't really there. We sat with Kirill for a couple of hours, and he tells me, there's a joke here, but the fact that your wife is so knowledgeable about things that are undesirable is not good at all. I don't want them to have anything so interesting in that club after what they've been swallowing in there. So how do you find out? I ask him. I say, well, what a particular club I know, but how do I calculate whether they had something there or not? Because this weekend my wife stayed at home, and I actually knew the name of the club and the name of this Albertic DJ was an option just to go and ask him. But think about it, whether he would confess. And in general here is talking on these topics with the first found passerby in this club. Of course he wouldn't. We sat with Kirill for a while. We were trying to figure out how we could blackmail Albertic, but we couldn't find any options. And then we were helped by Kirill's wife, who came home after an appointment at the clinic. As I saw her white coat, so immediately realized at what places and under what circumstances even strangers could talk to each other on the most intimate issues and topics. In general, we climbed up with Cyril on the internet and printed a certificate that supposedly found something transmissible to all in an understandable way. Now there is something to talk about with Albertic, laughed his friend Kirill. And I still could not believe that I came to the point to do this kind of nonsense. But I certainly had nowhere to retreat to. I could not forget all the correspondence with his wife and girlfriend, plus their trips to these places I certainly could not. Anyway, on Saturday, Kirill and I are going to this club. While they're to the point, asked the waitress, will Albertic be there today or what? But so already, said a girl about 19 and pointed us to the console with all their music. After probably a dozen or so pointless and monotonous songs, Albertic came out from behind the console and had already had a couple of drinks, if not 3. I think it's time. I sat down at the bar right next to him. Back and forth, we exchanged a few words, decided to go out for a smoke. I said, listen, I've got this unpleasant situation that happened in my life. One of the ladies from your place of entertainment gave me a hard time. Here's this. So I hand him the certificate I drew. I'm trying to find out who it was, and I can only think of one. I pull out my phone and find, of course, a picture of my wife on it. So I say, look, she's kind of cute, but that's what she is. Here it is. I look at it, and the guy is kind of depressed. And then he says, you're not confused. I said no, the dates seem to match, but what is it? He told me, I don't know if you believe me or not, but I was with this lady myself about a week or 2 ago. Don't imagine it's a coincidence, but I'm serious, and I don't have any problems. So look for the problems somewhere else. It's probably not from her. Well, or always use whatever you have to use with them. You got it? Got it. Especially since that picture is of my wife. Can you imagine? He's not talking. Don't worry, Albertic, I have no complaints about you, although you could see the ring on your finger. If it was there, of course. Look at the picture again. Are you sure? You're not confused. Is it? If there's no complaint, Albert won't answer. You're sure? 100%. Yeah, her. She's here with her friend, Anka. The last time they were too active. I'd even say overexcited. And that's either Anka or the other one in the picture. Maybe they ate something wrong. You're an adult, you probably know what I mean. It happens here. I didn't want to hear any more of it. I went back inside, I told Kirill, let's pay up and get out. We went outside, I told him everything I told you. I decided to go straight home and do what they usually do at these moments. Kirill stopped me. You better exhale and remember that your car and some of the good stuff is in Vika's name. You make a scandal now, divorce, consider giving it all to her. For all her adventures. Understand? Well, we went back to the club. Of course we got a strong one. But now we have to calmly and methodically, while we are still married to her, and quickly get the property out from under her. I think let the surprise with the disclosure and divorce, it will catch up with her at a time when the property is only what she earned herself. Second story. Life seemed perfect for a young couple, but one day the husband accidentally stumbled upon evidence of his wife's infidelity. Shocked by the betrayal, he decided to get revenge, and his plan was as daring as their love story. What did he come up with, and how did the story end? Find out now. The story of my first wife's no-exaggeration betrayal took its origin when I decided to stay at a friend's house for 2 days at the time. I couldn't listen to any more of my wife's empty nerve-wracking on the level playing field. I must say right away that after those 2 days at my friend's house, I was never supposed to live there again. On one of those 2 days, I was driving my car toward evening along a busy street. It was snowing outside. In general, our roads are not really cleaned that much. And here the snow was flying from literally everywhere. Road years with snow, ruts. Well, of course as the evil, right under my wheels from somewhere on the right side of parked at the side of the cars ran out a medium-sized dog. And I'm going though not very close, but in the flow. Snow, ice, dusk, evening, and I was already tired. In short, of course felt sorry for the dog. I braked sharply, slightly twisted the steering wheel. Of course, the car was bent. And as a result of this, of course, I drove into the park on the right and into the mark. The airbags went off for both me and her. I get out, and of course the car's alarm went off. The car isn't really exclusive, but it's expensive. 3, if not 4, times more expensive than mine. After a couple of minutes, the owner comes out of the restaurant, and with him 2 other people. They are about 50 years old. I must give them their due, they came out without any swearing or anything like that, and looked at the damage on the car. I told them about the dog. The fact that you saved the dog, well done. Now we got to salvage this situation somehow, you know. I said, let's call the cops. I'm not running away, and I'm not going anywhere. But there was no way out. They tell me, we are like those who will run 100 years in court, but then another 100 years to get at least something. Your no one here in general does not charge anything extra type. Pay what you did, and we all go away in peace, and that's all. In short, I understand that I probably should have done things differently, but I know what it is. I've heard about the courts for a few years, even on minor traffic accidents, but also the fact that the amount as a result of this can only increase in the end. There are lawyers from both sides of all the examinations. If you do too, will need to pay me for any fault, plus the penalties may be well, and so on. Yes, and these comrades. The more time dragged on, the more they talked thicker. Plus to all not far from this point still were the 90s. In general, everything depended on the amount of money they were asking for now. They call their friends from service, described what and where they need to fix it, and I call there, where I was served myself and also ask about the price of such repair. In short, plus or minus we agreed on the amount. Just in case we roughly sketched a diagram of the accident, but then went to my place. I wanted to take a small stash of money from myself, plus some more to borrow from my family, I guess. I go in with one of them, the owner of the car, to my house, and my wife is sitting there, as well as my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Well, hello, I say to all 3 of them and outline to them this situation. And that's when my family life came to an end overnight. and my father-in-law and mother-in-law tell me no, we won't give you any money. I say, come on, I'll repair my car and sell it, and I'll give you your money without any problems at all. Well, or if you cannot, at least some time to wait. Now quickly sell my wife's car. It is our common. And then my wife and I will deal with each other what and how. As it turned out later, I was mistaken so that the car is common, but it came to me later. In general, they are 3 no. My wife, even to the heap, lamented to me about what I was. This situation has put her life in danger too. Of course, I did it on purpose. In general, I'm in mild shock. I call my friends. They are kind of willing to give money. We go downstairs with the owner of the hit-and-run car. He says, "Wow, those are my 3 relatives above." I'm silent. I then caught myself thinking, by the way, that because of the anger I felt towards these 3 underbreds, I had even forgotten about the situation with the cars for a minute. But okay, in general, we went to a friend's house and then to another one. Collected money for the evening and settled, but no complaints to me either. We said goodbye to the owner of the knocked-out car, and he said, of course, "Doe and Doe, there was not much good for you today, but if I were you, I would not greed for the car now, something with the wrong company you guy had tied his life to." We said goodbye, okay, but from then on my story only gained momentum. I go to my friend's house again. We are discussing all these things with him. I am no longer thinking about the car and about the money, but about the fortune that the expensive in-laws on the part of the no less inexpensive wife had thrown out. And very soon, by the way, I found out, and why these fellows had stiffed the money, and why the aunt and mother-in-law were in our apartment that night in the first place. The next day, I go back to my house, and there are already my things, stacked closer to the doorstep. My wife is not at home. There is a note. The note, in short, is all divorce and maiden name. After a whole month of everything, she's here on the level. Well, even after this situation yesterday, plus the fact that I was in such severe difficulties immediately thrown overboard, I was not even upset. Honestly, myself, already wanted to end this marriage. But I couldn't end it without my wife's tricks. In short, I'm taking things this day and go to a friend. With my wife, we actually filed for divorce. And from that moment on, for me, in general, and came a series of discoveries. One day I sit in court, I look, is my wife and I mutual friend Marina. She, in general, and a lawyer with their firm, in which my wife works. Hello, back and forth. Something says you have not seen with Lena for a long time, but with my wife. I said so and so, that it was a divorce. She tells me yes, I understand then. Okay. Although you know, Slav, I honestly do not understand what she found in it. I said, hello, who else is it in him? Tell me. She's in Dima, who else? They've been seeing each other for, like 3 months, if not more. And they're looking at me. So you don't know, do you? I thought that's why you guys broke up. You guys haven't been together for, like, 1,000 years. Or not. I think it's great. Turns out we also have Dima here. But then everything fell into place. Now I understand where all these scandals for a month came from, and why those with my mother-in-law came to visit us on that day. Well, these days, when I lived at a friend's house. There they were, apparently deciding what to do next, but, as a matter of fact, how best to stop our marriage. And then imagine, in the middle of this conversation in the door suddenly appears me, with some unknown to them, a man, and urgently require help money. Yes, I had 1,000% less chance of getting anything from them that night than winning $1 million in the lottery. While the divorce papers were lying there somewhere, or, as they say, being processed there, my wife started calling me. Well, like, let's talk. Maybe we shouldn't end up like this, and so on. Apparently, there were some problems with Dimashka. At first I told her no, I won't live with traitors for sure. I'm already at that point. I talked to her friend. Well, Marin is this one. But in the process of phone conversations with his wife, was already aware of Dimashka. But then it suddenly dawned on me, but in the same view, we bought mostly for my own money, and made out his dear wife to his mother-in-law, his mother. They say, anything can happen in life, let them hang on my mother-in-law. What do we care, right? And now I am in debt because of someone else's car, and I need to restore mine. Me, as it turns out, here with Dimashka attached, so now in the process of our divorce, and this car I do not even see half. Well, it turns out so, and remain with Dimka, and the car, and without any problems. It does not work that way. If it's like that with me, then I think that morally I also need to untie my hands. Well, why not? Anyway, as strange as it may seem, don't call anymore. If you want something, I can come and listen, but that's the maximum. Okay, we met. We talked. I had to pretend that we made up. My wife, even though she was practically not my wife anymore, immediately became silky, but temporarily. I tell her in a couple of days I have to pay my debts, I mean for the car. Let's sell yours quicker. I take my part of its value, you take yours, then we decide, or buy a new one. That's pretty much what we did. And then, there's probably no need to explain. I told her what I know about Dimashka and about their meetings for months. Let's take her and Luni softly. In short, in the end, it was a divorce. And I didn't regret for a second that I did exactly what I told you today. By the way, some weeks later I heard that she and Dimka were seen together somewhere, but I didn't care about that anymore. Such a story, and after several years I am even glad now that it happened this way, and that fate only took money from me for this lesson. After all, we could have had children or something else, which would not have been fixed simply with money. In general, this story, firstly, did not break me, but only made me stronger, and secondly, removed the rose-colored glasses about the phenomenon called marriage. I have nothing against the concept of family, but to grow to that concept, I'm sure that two people just get married is not enough. That's it for me. Good luck, and have a good mood.